how you think about leadership. Leadership does not drive execution, at least not in the way most people think. Because if leadership alone drove execution, then experienced leaders wouldn't struggle with missed deadlines, confused teams, and constant follow-ups. So here is the real question. If leaders are doing their job, why is execution still breaking down? Why is execution still breaking down? Stay with me, because the answer will completely change how you lead. And here is the part most leaders don't realize. Execution doesn't fail at the team level. It fails at the thinking level. Let me tell you a story. I worked with a CEO who was doing everything right on paper. Clear vision, regular updates, weekly check-ins, performance tracking. But despite all that, execution kept on breaking. Projects stalled, teams misaligned, decisions delayed, and his frustration was simple. I'm communicating clearly, so why isn't anything moving? Why isn't anything moving? Here is what he didn't see. He was leading activity, but not aligning the thinking. Yes, he was not aligning the thinking. And this is where most leadership models fall. This is where they actually fall short. They focus on what leaders say and do, but ignore how people think. They ignore how people think. Let's redefine leadership for a moment. Leadership is not, one, giving direction, two, setting goals, three, monitoring performance. Those are outputs. The real role of leadership is this: to align how people think about matters. To align how people think about matters. Because execution depends on the following. One, how priorities are interpreted. Number two, how trade-offs are understood. Number three, how decisions are made. And none of that is controlled by instructions alone. None of that is controlled by instructions alone. Think of, think of it like a film director. A director doesn't act in any scene. They don't control every moment. They don't even control every movement. But they do something far more important. They ensure everyone understands the story the same way. Because if actors interpret story differently, the film falls apart. That is leadership. That is leadership. This is what happens when leadership doesn't align thinking. Number one, priorities become personal. Each team decides what matters most. Number two, decisions become inconsistent. Different standards, different criteria, different outcomes. Number three, accountability becomes blurred. Because no one's operating from the same logic. They are not. And from the outside, it looks like one, poor performance, two, lack of ownership, three, weak leadership. But underneath, it is misaligned cognition. Underneath, it is misaligned cognition. Remember this: your team is not failing to execute. They are executing different versions of reality. That is what they are doing. They are not failing to execute, but they are executing different versions of reality. Most leaders respond to execution problems by 1. Increasing oversight, 2. Adding more meetings, 3. Tracking more KPIs. But here is the problem. Control does not create alignment. In fact, the more you try to control execution externally, the more misalignment you create internally. But because people comply, but they don't think the same way. People comply, but they don't think the same way. So what should leaders actually do? What should leaders actually do? 1, leaders must architect thinking. This means 1, defining how success is understood. Number 2, clarifying how priorities are evaluated. Number 3, establishing how decisions are made. Not occasionally, but consistently. This is where my organizational community alignment model becomes powerful, because it shifts leadership from managing behavior to aligning cognition. And when cognition is aligned, execution stops being forced and it starts becoming natural. Execution starts becoming natural rather than forced. Here is a simple leadership shift you can apply immediately in your organization. Instead of asking, are people doing what I said? Start asking, are people thinking the way we need to execute? And clarify 3 things. Number 1, what does success actually mean? Not in metrics, but in shared understanding. Number 2, what takes priority when things conflict? Because execution breaks at the point of trade-offs. Number 3, how are decisions made? Define the logic, not just the outcome. When these are aligned, you don't need to chase execution. You don't. Yes, when these are aligned, you don't need to chase execution. I worked with a leadership team that made this shift. They didn't increase control. They didn't add more systems. They aligned how decisions were made across the organization. Yes, they aligned how decisions were made across the organization. And within weeks, meetings became shorter, decisions became faster, accountability became clearer, and execution started working. So here's the truth. The role of leadership is not to drive execution. It is not. It is to create the conditions where execution becomes inevitable. That is their role. And that only happens when thinking aligns. Yes, it only happens when thinking aligns. If this changed how you see leadership, subscribe, because in the next video, I'll break down why clear strategies still fail in execution and what most leaders completely overlook. But once you understand this, you just don't lead better. You build organizations that actually execute. Let me repeat that. Because once you understand this, you don't just lead better. You build organizations that actually execute.